Hey guys, I'm Michelle Carpenter and I hope you're all well today. Most certainly feeling different vibrations in the last few days, different energies, different intensities, different triggers. It has most certainly been a great week of change and exposing ourselves, I think at times, to the old, exposing meaning the old that comes up. And it's kind of like, here it is, here we go. Are you good? What are you going to do with this? And I most certainly was triggered yesterday. So it's very interesting for me when I have somebody who wants to book in with me, but then gives me a whole sob story and a whole pity party about why they would like a discount. And it's sometimes for me, guys, what I realize and what I am realizing in these spiritual journeys, which we all spirit, all of us are spiritual. Okay, it's something I didn't believe for a very long time, just based on the background that I grew up in, my different belief systems, my thoughts the stuff that I was exposed to, the stuff that I was told. It didn't sit right for a long time. But gosh, in the last few years, I've come to realize 150,000 million % we are energy. And we are spirits having a human experience. When I used to listen to Wayne Dyer 15 years ago when I started my journey, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what he meant. Man, I so do now. And it was very interesting for me as this person reached out, overstepped many boundaries. I gave of my time once, just to have a catch up and a connect. And I do hope that this woman sees this message, because I did share with her, please go and check out a few of my channelings and see if the energy resonates with you, see if they resonate with you. She overstepped a few boundaries, contacted me, sent me a message, phone call at 9:30 on a Saturday, then again on Sunday. And then I sent her a message saying, this is my rate. And please know I have a daughter in university, I have a mortgage to pay, and she came back accepting it, and then sent me a long message and had gone through a few of my channelings, basically telling me that I am coming from an ego space. And if you are watching this, I hope that you are, because my heart initially felt really saddened by the fact that you could send me a long text message in bold capital letters, on and off, about the channelings and what they have had to say, and that I'm not pure love. And it was incredibly hurtful. And I thought to myself, wow, it was interesting how it was okay for her to project and tell me that she's a pensioner and she has stuff to pay for her grandson, and but then the expectation was that I should give her a discount. Now, when somebody's trying to make me feel guilty or pushing their expectation on me, and I'm sitting with it and I feel, and this is gut feeling, guys. I really just sat with it and I thought, wow, what do I do? But my initial gut response when I first spoke to her was like, I'm not here to fix anybody. I'm not. Yes, I work with energy. Yes, I'm a healer. Yes, I bring the Council of Eight through. Yes, my tonings are incredible. But I'm not here to fix anybody, because we're here to heal ourselves. I will always say, and I used to believe that I could, which is ego, but I always say I walk with you. The Council of Eight walk with you guys on your journey. And it was fascinating for me to have this projection and this expectation. I kind of skimmed over the last message and I thought, wow, is she right? Is she not right? And I felt triggered by so many things that she had quoted. And I thought, okay, call me out. Yes, I'm showing up in love, in my understanding of life. Those who follow me, those who watch these videos, I'm most certainly keeping it as real as I possibly can, hence my sharings or my oversharings. And I'm learning to love myself. And in loving myself, I charge my worth. I have 15 years of incredible modalities that I've learned, and a huge amount of experience. And where I'm going with this today, and I'm going to put up a a disclaimer or a notice that my story may trigger other human beings. So I'm pleased just letting you know that I've been guided, and I was kind of very antsy to share my story. I was like walking around and they say, Michelle, you've got to share it. And I had somebody give me the message the other night, and I thought, okay, I'm going to sit today. I've got some time today. Let me share my story. So my story may trigger some of you. It may bring up something inside of you. I don't know what. It may not. It's my hope is that my sharing that that where I am today, that we can get through some of the harshest times. We can get through life when we're feeling deeply, deeply alone, and where nobody perhaps is showing up for us. And we can get through some really, really, really traumatic circumstances. So this is my sharing. This is me going to the deepest, deepest, deepest parts of my story, parts of my heart. Guaranteed, I can feel the tears, so I've got tissues. So just bear with me, guys, as I share with you. Because where I was going with this experience that I created yesterday, that came into my reality, where I was triggered by this woman. And I thanked her, not physically, I thanked her in the ethers for being a teacher. And I thought, no, I am owning my worth. So, and I'm walking my talk, and I'm speaking my truth. And sometimes when we speak our truths, it's challenging. I'm not wearing the scarf today because I have a sore throat. I'm wearing it because I just felt like this is what I needed. I needed the strength. I needed the power to be around me today. And also I'm cold. Just putting it out there. We're still in winter. But this is my story. And it's my feelings, emotions that are pouring out here on the screen. It's my perceptions, my understandings, my rememberings, my observations of how I remember my life to be. And it's not about judgment. It's not about blaspheming or wanting to shame my parents, my family, the people that I will not mention names, but people that may come up as I'm talking about my story. It's me sharing. I have shared this in depth a few times on different podcasts, and I know it kind of brings a stillness when I'm sharing, and I judge myself thinking, oh my God, this isn't a light story to share. But we've all got a story, guys. Hence I started keeping it real, because we've all got a story to share. And you know what the biggest thing that holds us back is the feeling of shame or ashamed or feelings of embarrassment. So here it goes. I was born in Zimbabwe, which used to be known as Rhodesia, in 1972. Yes, this is all of, 51 years worth. Still my maths. But yes, born in 1972. And my mom and dad were young parents. I think my mom was 22 or 23, 22 when she had me. I have an older brother who's 3.5 years older than me. I remember a lot of how I was raised. There's stories that I have shared with my parents that they perhaps have forgotten, like my kids would share things with me and I've forgotten. But been born in Zimbabwe, been born into that African vibration, which I cherish with all my heart. And I miss Africa with all my heart. There's a vibration, guys, a pulsation that happens in Africa. So I was born into this wonderful family. My dad was a Rhodesian soldier. It is interesting when I share with people, in my dad's words, that he was sent into the army to go and fight terrorists. I am corrected nowadays by human beings who have the audacity to correct me and say, they are freedom fighters, Michelle. And I'm like, my dad, in his words, he was led to go and fight terrorists. My dad had seen some of his best friends blown up in a helicopter, which he was meant to be in. And there was a lot of fighting, a lot of alcohol, a lot of fighting. My mom was always packing my dad's bags. And I remember being about 2.5, 3 years old, sitting on my dad's lap. In the good old 70s, where they wore those big shoes that gave you extra lift, and the big collars, the real, just a really cool time, the bell-bottom pants. My dad had black hair, jet black hair, and a black beard and a moustache. Very, very good-looking man. Both my parents were very, very, my mom's a beautiful woman. And I was sitting on my dad's lap. My dad was crying because my mom had packed my dad's bags once again and was kicking him out. And probably rightfully so, she'd had enough of his shit. And I was sitting wiping his tears saying, it's going to be okay, Daddy, it's going to be okay. I remember a lot of the fighting. I don't know who hit who. When I've asked my dad, he reckons my mom punched him. I woke up a few times to some screaming, shouting, fighting, punching. My mom was a very angry woman, bless her cotton socks. I think she carried so much for her own mother and father. But I didn't know this as a young girl. I was 2 years old. My mom put me into, we used to have those toweling nappies. And I remember this story because my mom repeated it time and time again of how proud she was of me, but how quick I got the life lesson. She put me into panties to potty train me, and I wet my panties. First time, apparently. And in my mom's words, she smacked me so hard that I never ever wet my panties again. So this is little girl that I'm talking about. This little Michelle. My husband was kind enough to do this for me. Love is why we are here. But this little person who I put up on my wall and I look at every day had experienced a very challenging life. So yes, I'm still healing. I feel for this little person that's inside of me. Another thing that my mom used to joke about was calling me a little bitch. And I used to apparently repeat it in front of her friends. She'd say, what's your name? And I'd say, little bitch. And they'd all pack out laughing. Again, I didn't know that there was anything wrong. I was the only granddaughter to my mom's side of the family for a long time. My mom's got 3 brothers, 2 older, 1 younger. And I used to go and stay over at my grandparents' home. And the youngest brother was going into teenagehood, puberty. He was fully developed, fully grown. I remember he had a big amount of hair down there around his penis. And he sexually abused me. Again, this is not the easiest information to hear. A lot of times as sexually abused humans, not just women, men too, we feel so ashamed to share our story because we feel like we're the one that's in the wrong. And It's not our fault, guys. And so he made me give him blowjobs and hand jobs. And I didn't know this was anything wrong. And the next day I woke up, especially after the first night, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is something. This is, as little people who are 5, 6 years old, we're developing around there, and that's where we play touchy, doctor. A big part of my letting go of my shame was I wanted to share this good feeling with my friends. So let's go play doctor under the bed, Obviously, he told me to keep this information to myself, which I did for many, many years. Again, had no idea until I was a teenager that this was wrong, what he did to me. And never shared it with my parents until I was 33 years old. But straight after these things that happened to me, I was on the back of a bicycle with a friend of mine, those bicycles that had little carriers on the back. And we were playing in the street, and she turned the corner, and my right big toe, went into the chain, got stuck in the chain. And gosh, everybody was there. My toe was dangling on a bit of skin. They managed to rescue it. I've still got it, thank goodness. And it was incredible how I felt so privileged being in hospital and eating lots of pudding. I love jelly and custard. But what I've come to realize that's probably where I started my self-abuse, self-sabotaging, getting the attention. For many years I suffered from tonsillitis, as a teenager, bronchitis. My mom was always bringing a hot face cloth, to my head. And my mom was a really good mom, guys, in other ways, but she smacked us. She smacked my oldest brother now with a stick a few times. She had a very good throw with a shoe, like especially if we were running away. She just could aim. But my mom was in her own inner torment. And these were just a few moments that I remember as a young kid. And I remember the fighting. There was a lot of partying, a lot of good partying, a lot of just dancing, a lot of laugh. That's where I got my love for music. I started dancing at the age of 4, 5 years old. I got my love for music and dancing from my parents, so I'm so grateful for that. But there was a lot of alcohol involved, a lot of alcohol. And that came with fighting. One of my mom's other stories was I was a young baby on her hip. I think it was me or my youngest brother, I can't remember. My dad had come home drunk one night, and she'd had a rifle. My dad was he would go to the shooting range, and we would go and watch him shoot his rifle. And she used to laugh about this, like she had, I think it was me on her hip, and she's trying to cock the rifle. Like she was that mad at my dad. I can't comprehend it. Like I've been angry, guys. Like I've raged like a bull. But that's a click over, And she'd say, yeah, funny, ha ha ha, big laugh. And we'd laugh about it. But all of this deeply traumatized us. Used to have migraines growing up. My dancing was my safe haven. My parents were really good parents in that the fact that they fled Zimbabwe. My dad was being threatened a few times, and we fled. I think my dad said we left with like 9 boxes. He went to South Africa to go get a job. My youngest brother was 1 at the time, so I was 9, 7.5 or 8, I think. Yeah, almost 9. And we went on a train to South Africa and They restarted their lives in South Africa. Not easy when you've given away almost everything and you've had to start from scratch. And I'm sure some of you that are watching this, your parents have either been through this. Some of us that have immigrated have perhaps felt the same, even though it's very different. We came with a container full of furniture, so we were very lucky. But to start again, I remember my parents taking years and years to start again. And we lived in a little mining town. And my dad comes from a background of being an electrician. And they used to have these little brick homes, and you could see who the miners were because we lived in these homes that were built for the people who worked on the mine, and were always known to be poor. Those are the poor people because of these brick homes. And it was really fascinating because I grew up with that mentality. I grew up with the conditioning of being poor. And yet my dad worked his butt off. He worked his arse off. But he drank a lot as a coping mechanism. And the alcohol affected us. He was never violent. He grew up in a violent home. Again, a lot of alcohol. My dad was pretty severely abused by, I think, his dad and one of his older brothers. In South Africa, we have what's called a sjambok, which is really, gosh, I'm just feeling for my dad. He shared this with me the one time when I was an adult. And I was like, wow, Dad, how did you get through this, He was a smoker and a drinker. Like, on weekends, he used to drink and watch rugby and drink and watch rugby. But that came with the anger that was perhaps suppressed. Like I say, he never smacked us, that I can ever remember. But he was very angry. He was very okay to let us know, me know, exactly how he felt. And scream and shout. So there was a lot of screaming and shouting in our home. And even in me sharing this with you, and me feeling these feelings, these emotions, this old pain, this is part of the old that needs to come up. So I kind of know that this is why I'm sharing my story, but it still doesn't make it easy, guys. So please just bear with me. So yes, I, as much as I could, would be funny. I still experimented with children. Experimented. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Oh, just sounds terrible. Or explored. I think explored sounds better. But the shame that I felt, because I just wanted everybody to feel this feeling that my uncle had brought up for me. I didn't know there was anything wrong with this. Anything. And I've come to realize in the therapy work that I do that so many people that have been sexually abused didn't realize it was wrong. There's something in our bodies that go, oh, like it took me a long time to get my uncle's energy out of my body, like around my throat area. Just wasn't ideal. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what these people think that go down this road. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I've worked with a lot of mostly women who have been sexually abused. And it's a hard thing to speak about. I then started with bulimia as a young teenager. I don't know if I read about it but being a ballet dancer, I didn't have the typical ballerina stick figure. And it was so super debilitating. But I got it wrong. I was eating too much, not drinking enough water. It became a lot of hard work, and then putting my fingers down my throat. And I got it wrong because I was eating too much and not vomiting enough. So my ballet teacher called my mom in, said she's worried about me because I'm getting a bit chunky. My face was getting quite fat. And I was like, I've got to do something different. The bizarre thing is I used to do it just after dinner. And for a lot of my life, I think my own feeling is I felt invisible and alone. My dad used to be there for me in the physical way, like he'd be there to pick me up after dancing, where, we'd dance for hours and hours, and he'd always drive me to the places I needed to go to. My mom didn't learn how to drive or get her license until she was 66. And so he was there for me in the physical, but he didn't know how to show up for me in the emotional way of life, which is what I so desperately needed. what I forgot to share with you was when we were young living in Zimbabwe, my dad had affairs, 2 affairs, I believe. And that obviously had brought up a lot of the anger for my mom. A lot of the fighting was a big part of that. And, you know, one of the times that they fought, this is fascinating. This is when I started getting into this work and realizing that we more. I said to my mom the once, Mom, I remember you throwing these big maroon plates at Dad. And I remember the dining room table. I remember the sideboard. She goes, that's impossible, Michelle. So I said, what do you mean it's impossible? She said, I was about 7 or 8 months pregnant with you in my stomach. She says, how did you know? And that's when I realized that we remember. The other thing was, and I've warned my friends about this and my husband, this is probably why I'm a bit loopy at times. And this is funny that I can look at it in a funny way. But apparently it wasn't funny at the time. My mom shared with me that she, I think, was 5 or 6 months pregnant with me. 5, okay. And she fell down the stairs, but she fell on her knees to avoid falling on her stomach. And my dad didn't deal with it well, according to my mom. He didn't really help much. And her knees were really swollen, obviously. And another time they went camping and a snake wrapped itself around my mom's belly and the head was here. And when she was pregnant with me again, and she grabbed it and she threw it. So my point being is that there's complete damage. You gotta take the piss, eh? A friend of mine said to me, okay, that makes sense. So anyhow, fast forward to bulimia. I then just continue with bulimia from the age of about 14, 15 till the age of about 24, 23, 24. I wasn't severe, but if I went out drinking when I was an adult, no problem, put my fingers down my throat, would bring it up. And then it became obviously a mental game that I had to stop it, because I did it with food. Every time I overindulged, no problem, just put your fingers down your throat. And then at 16 and a half, I had the most beautiful friend, Tracy, who's an absolute light in my life. We'd known each other and come to know each other from the time I moved to South Africa, which was in Senate 2. And we were such good friends. We danced together. Oh man, we just had the best sleepovers, the best time. But she had a condition that she was born with, and she needed to have a kidney transplant, which she did. And then she passed over. And I was 16 and a half, almost 17. And I remember being at hospice in Houghton in Johannesburg and watching her parents come out of a counseling session and sitting there thinking, wow, how does that happen? How does that woman hold it together when she's surrounded by death? And unbeknownst to me, my soul was already preparing me for all these things. Hence, again, in my understanding of my life, it has been big. I've chosen some really big experiences. So Tracy died. I was very angry at her funeral. Angry but deeply sad, because I said to a lot of the girls there, so I'm apologizing right now to any of you who do happen to watch this. I was like, why are you crying? Because she was at home for quite a few months before she went to hospice. And often friends used to come and say, we're going to come and visit. Tell Tracy we're going to come and visit. And then nobody would come and visit. And I also wasn't innocent, like there were times where I was like, oh, I just want to go here. I want to go there. And then I'd feel so guilty because I'm not visiting Trace. And at the funeral, I said, well, why didn't you come visit? It's too late now. And terrible thing to say, but I was so hurting. And my matric farewell, which is the last dance of our year in South Africa, of our school years in South Africa, I decided to, I don't know what I was thinking, but her mom had sewed, she was a Latin American dancer, and her mom had sewed all her costumes. So I said to my mom, come with me, Mom, come, let's go and be with, Tracy's mom, and we're going to buy material. And anyway, went for a dress that, if I look at it today, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? But anyway, it is what it is. My mom chose not to come with me. My mom was hurting. She was angry. She didn't want to be with me. My parents didn't even compliment me the night that I was all dressed up for my final farewell dance. They were just in their own place of pain. I can't understand it as a parent myself, but it hurt. It hurt like hell. They didn't get up to greet my date. No photos were taken. It was just like, well, you chose the other woman instead of, this is what my dad said to me in these drunken rages. Do you know what this is doing to your mom? And I'd say, but I've asked mommy to come with, So these are just, little snippets of things that are coming through right now, and as I remember them. So Tracy died, and I then proceeded to dive into church. My mom had taken us to church for many years, and I really got involved in Pentecostal, becoming a reborn Christian, being baptized. Love being in the Pentecostal front and singing and dancing, my kind of thing. And what I came to realize now is that we were all speaking in tongues, speaking light language, but the vibe was awesome. But once again, I put my faith and trust in somebody outside, other people. And I got involved with a guy, and such a beautiful human being. And we were just like so straight and narrow, straight-laced, and then we came to find out that this one was shagging that one in the church, and that one was shagging that one in the church. But I was so bad, guys, so deeply, badly involved in the church. Whether that's a bad thing or not, I was 17 and a half, but so lost. I was standing outside nightclubs. For those of you who are South African, Belinapolis, masquerades, preaching with the Bible. Who the hell does that shit? Who takes a young kid or these young teenagers? That's what I don't understand. Trying to save people coming out of a nightclub that are drunk and freaking high as kites. Yeah, I did. I still remember having a satchel and my big Jesus cross on my bag. And what I didn't mention, though, is a few days after Tracy's death. Because in our days, we didn't go for counseling. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. Whatever we went through, we went through. Tracy died that morning, the morning of the 26th of April. And I still went to school after the phone call, and people were like, do you think she knows? Do you think she knows? And the bizarre thing is that I just sucked it up. But within the same week, I took tablets. I think I took like 5 or 8 tablets. I just wanted to end my life. I didn't want to live. I didn't know how to share with my parents how sad I was. And like I say, got involved in the church, loved the church, loved the youth group every Friday. I just felt like I was a part of something. And that's what we really long for as human beings, is to be a part of something. And got involved with this one guy. And he then went to the army and didn't work out. But I started repeating these patterns, these life patterns of bringing guys into my space that would cheat, that would leave me. And I didn't realize it was a pattern from what I'd learned throughout life with my mom and my dad. Because my grandfather, I came to find out, was an absolute womanizer. Had many different affairs. I mean, my grandmother, interesting enough, used to pack her bags and come and live with us. My mom's mom. My grandmother suffered many mental breakdowns. Also had a very, very, very bad, brutal upbringing. But all that anxiety is carried through us. I want to say onto us, but through us more than anything else. And my mom, I think my mom a lot of the times was the mother in the relationship, because she used to pack my grandmother up and say, you're going to go back home, because my grandmother would always be packing her bags and coming to live with us. And then 2 days, 3 days later, she felt better, so she'd go back. But this is the same person who was almost killed with an axe by her own mother. So that, could you imagine the trauma that was, the anxiety that was in my grandmother's body? Her own state of mind, that she just, I think, lost it so many times on many medications, many tranquilizers. So my mom went the opposite route, where she just didn't want any medication, didn't like anything to do with medicine, modern medicine. and really was very wise in tissue salts and herbs and that kind of stuff. So to go back to guys coming and going, I then got involved with a guy for 4.5 years. And again, I just dived myself into his family. I was like an all or nothing kind of person. Dived myself into his family. Forgot my mom's birthday. Oh my God, I went tits up. If you want to know the wrath of my mother, Veronica, it was quite severe. My school friends in high school used to stand behind me. So my maiden name is Bell, Michelle Bell. Had Michelle Bell, Michelle, my Bell, sang to me many, many times in my life. But people used to stand behind me and go, hello, Mrs. Bell. And she'd say, I don't like that friend. They need to, why don't they come and address me? And I'd say, Mom, they're scared of you. What are they to be scared? My mom was very, very firm. Oof. Ek het myself gekak. In South African, that's like, you shit yourself. Like, I lived in a lot of fear around my mom. If I was late coming home from a friend, I would run, man, like freaking road runner to get home, because I knew I was going to be in big trouble. So these are just, again, things that were happening in my life. I had a few car accidents when I was a young adult. Didn't realize that this was kind of me, or my team trying to wake me up to me. Go get help, Michelle, go get help. No, I just continued. You just go. Stress. The better stressed I am, the more I've got this, I'm fine. Put on a big brave face. Got involved with this guy. He proposed to me. And then I found out he was cheating on me. Oh, and I had like 2 drunken weeks where I was drinking Jack Daniels out of the bottle. And then 2 weeks was my thing. I was like, woke up. That's it. We're done. And I gave him his ring, but I got a washing machine. The washing machine served me very well. But he insisted, either the washing machine or the ring, so I gave him the ring back. And this was when I was 24 years old. And then I got involved the very next week with a guy who I had been massively in love with. His brother and I had been best friends for a very, very long time, most of our lives. We'd grown up. And that thing where you kind of somehow... I was just so screwed up in my mind, and I so desperately wanted to be loved that I decided a week later, after a 4.5-year relationship, I'm going to get involved with this guy. Wonderful. We had amazing sex. He was older than me, treated me very, very well. But then it started to become a little bit violent. But I used to push. Now remember, I come from a background of anger, fighting. So this mouth can be on, okay? And as much as I loved this guy, we started building a house together, and my gut was screaming at me, Michelle, don't do this, do not do this, do not do this. And I was like, no, it's fine, it's all going to be fine, it's going to be okay. And then the one night we went to a friend of mine's 30th birthday party, and she was coming out of her party trying to say goodbye to us, and as it happens, this one grabs her, that one grabs her, and she saw him like pull me, and she's like, oh gosh, Mish, she's one of my best friends in South Africa, and she's like, I'm coming, because she saw him pull me, and we climb in the car, and this was about 2:00 in the morning, driving home in Johannesburg. Got home that night, and I thought, that's it, I'm sleeping in the other spare bedroom. Now bear in mind, we're building a house together. Went and slept in the spare bedroom, and he came and he grabbed me and he threw me onto the bedroom that we were sleeping in. And crazy, man, crazy. And I sobbed myself to sleep. Woke up the next morning, we were still driving through to my parents. I kept a lot of things away from my parents, a lot of secrets from my parents. I just never thought that they would understand, and I thought I would be judged. A lot of the times I always felt it was kind of conditional. If I shared, because I was a very emotional teenager, okay, very emotional. Why are you crying, Michelle? I'm like, I don't know, I'm crying. And I just couldn't get my words out, but I'd be sobbing my heart out, sobbing. And I often used to be told to shut up and stop the crying. So I kept it all here and on my chest. So hence I used to get sick a lot, as I shared with you guys. And then we drove through to my hometown, this mining town, the next day. I dropped him off for golf. He had written me this long letter, apologizing, crying in the car. But then I was like, okay, now I'm going to push you, buddy. Now I'm going to push you. But again, guys, I was so lost. And I just thought, like, he would just show me this affection, like I loved being held and hugged, and the house was being built. We moved into the house, and I started pushing and probing. Let me see if he's really going to hurt me. Let me see if he's really going to hurt me. And he didn't like the fact that I had a sharp shooting mouth. And the one time we were driving, and he took his hand and he whacked it on the back of my leg, and I'd just go quiet. And obviously you just go numb, stiff, can't breathe. And there was another time, and that's where it was like, the stuff was barely unpacked in the boxes. And I thought, I've got to get out of here. This isn't good for me. And there was something else that happened, which I'm not going to disclose because it was very damaging to me. And no, for those of you who are thinking, he did not rape me. For those of you, if your minds are going out there, but it was something close to that. And I came to understand that he probably was a nymphomaniac. And I didn't realize, we have all these addictions that happen in our life. As a sexual abuse survivor, most of us can go one way or the other. I was the nun, the cocktease in the club, like, yep, but you aren't going to get this. Thank goodness I had people looking after me upstairs. But some people, a lot of people I know, just lose themselves, and they just, I don't like to use the words because it's such a demeaning word, become sluts, because we labeled as that, as women. But a lot of women do, they just lose themselves. Because they don't know any different. And there's no judgment, but we feel so judged, we feel dirty. And I did after this one event that happened, and after that I was like, I got to get out of here. So I managed to get my part of the house sold. Oh my gosh, it didn't end there. This was in the July we moved in. We moved in April, May, June, July. We'd moved in, I think roughly, the timelines aren't 100% to my mind. I moved out 3 months later, 4 months later. October, I was made redundant by a beautiful company that I loved being in. I'd only been working them, but I was headhunted to go and work with them, for them, then made redundant. And in the December, I was driving down to Cape Town. I'm lying, sorry. Read it back. In the December, I was driving in my job as a sales rep. And I looked down, and I had connected with something. Unbeknownst to me, 4 people had stopped. My whole car was totaled, and I knocked over and killed a woman. These 4 people that had stopped, these 4 black people had stopped. This was not in the apartheid era. I want to be very clear for any of you that watch, because a lot of people know that as South Africans, and when my folks had gone from Zimbabwe to South Africa, we were still in the apartheid era. I didn't even know it was a thing, guys. I want you to know that. I knew that there was black and white people, but it's something in my mind I still can't comprehend. So this was years later, 1998. I'll never forget it, 15th of December, 1998. And I looked down to put a straw in a cool drink. And again, I never shared this for a very long time because of the shame I carried. I was on my side of the road. I just pulled off from a traffic light, what are called robots in South Africa. And this person had connected with my car. I'd connected with this person. And people stopped. They went to go look, and I was in a farm territory. So I don't know if it was a dog, a horse, a cow. And they came back, these 2 black gentlemen came back and said, "You've killed a woman." Oh, I was devastated. And they called the police, and they called the guys who come and collect the bodies at the mortuary. And I called my ex-boyfriend, the guy that I was with, that I built the house with, and him and his friend came. They went to go look at the body. She died instantly, I believe, due to internal injuries. And it was the most bizarre thing. I remember standing against my car, and she had this bright colored jersey. And the reason why I know this is there was another gentleman that had taken the jersey off her body because she had no blood apparently. They'd taken the jersey off her body, and he put it on and he took her umbrella. And I remember watching, thinking, you know, when you feel like you're in the twilight era, like, how is this possible? There's a dead body that's been packed up, and you've just taken the clothes off the person. I could never understand. And I remember the jersey. It was just mind-blowing for me. But on the flip side of that, how, you know, it's kind of like going to a second-hand store and buying clothes, you know. Maybe that's what he was thinking. I don't know. Maybe he needed the stuff. I don't know. Anyway, I was rushed to hospital because I had severe whiplash, deeply traumatized. They put me onto some tranquilizers, and I was out. And this ex-boyfriend of mine took me back to my parents, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. The problem was, though, is that 2 days later, I was driving down to Cape Town, a 12-hour drive in a car with 2 of my friends. And again, I just sucked it up. My friend said, are you sure? Do you want to do this? Yep, got to do this. People were saying, Mish, you've got to go see a counselor. You've got to see a therapist. Now, in December, not much happens. I eventually got myself into a therapist. I said to her, my late grandmother was on many tranquilizers, had many mental breakdowns. Please do not put me on anti-inflammatories. She said to me, here's not anti-inflammatories, antidepressants. Yeah, take these. These will make your breast milk because they're for mothers who are going through postpartum depression. Is it postpartum? Yeah. And I was like, okay, just took the script. Oh no, hang on. She gave me the script, sorry. I went to go get the medicine. And as I walked out of the pharmacy, I threw them away. I thought, no, I'm not going down this road. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have gone on them. I often think maybe I should have, just for a few months. It would have been great. I think. Maybe, I don't know. And I went back to my friend, and I cried in her arms. And I cried and cried and cried, and she held me. And I said, I don't know, how did I do this? How did I create this? And I cried and cried and cried. And then I partied hard. Partied like a freaking rock star. Drank like there was no tomorrow, till 4, 5, 6 o'clock every morning. I'd never taken drugs before. It was something that didn't come into my reality. Just wasn't part of my life. And partied hard, and then met my first husband. We met on Christmas Day. Fell hook, line and sinker in love. I still wonder how he took me on with all my shit. Knowing that year alone, but even knowing what I'd come through and what I'd gone through in my life, your man, like, massive. The guy had big balls. I was very in control, very controlling, probably very manipulative, actually very manipulative with my words, always wanting to know where he was, always in fear. Fear, just lived by fear. I then literally packed up. I was meant to be going to London, and my cousin phoned me from London and said, Michelle, do not come, you do not have a visa. I was like, that's it, I'm done with life. I just need to get out of South Africa. I need to get out of Johannesburg. And she said, you are going to be deported. Well, guess how the universe was looking after me. The friend that I was going to be flying with that night was having an affair. She was driving back after having a last-minute fling with her affair, and they had a car accident. And I was sitting at the airport with my dad. And she phoned, she said, you go on the flight, and I'll meet you in London. I'll get there in the next few days. And I went, no, we said we were going to do this together. Well, wasn't she a savings grace? Because I would have been deported. And I just thought I was bigger than London or bigger than the UK and their rules. I mean, really, that just goes to show you guys how lost I was. I was still deeply in love with the guy that I met in Cape Town. And my dad looked at me and said, go to Cape Town. A few days later, I was on a steam train, 24 hours with a few big bags, and arrived in Cape Town, starting my life in Cape Town. 2 months later, he proposed to me. I accepted. Yay, so excited. I'm getting married. This is just what I wanted. I wanted to get married. I wanted somebody to love me. I wanted somebody to get me. I wanted somebody to understand me. And every time I got involved with somebody, I would share with them about my sexual abuse. And you could see guys were like, I don't know what to do with this information. I just don't know what to do with this information. But I was hoping somebody would just understand. I'd hoping. Still hadn't told my parents, by the way. And my uncle was always at these gatherings, at these Christmas get-togethers, and I could feel my anger. We as South Africans were taught, we grew up to kiss each other on the lips and hug, and I'd always be like, oh man, I could feel my body resisting him, because obviously as I got older, I came to realize what had happened in my life and what he had done. And I had hatred, guys. Hatred. Oh my gosh. Absolute hatred. Taken to that, and then my mom programming me because of the way my dad had, or their relationship was, or my dad's affairs. My mom used to say, do not let a man dominate you, Michelle. Do not let a man dominate you. Well, in my infinite space of being Michelle, I always thought, oh, I'm in control. I've got everybody in control. I'm going to freaking manipulate everybody. I'm going to tell them how it is. And the reality is that I let them all control me in some way. As much as I was controlling, they were controlling me, including my ex-husband. Man, he could talk the talk and walk the walk. Kind of like a con man. He could just put it out there. Very good looking man, but he could just share, man. And well, this is what we're going to do. And I'd be like, okay, I trust you. Okay, I trust you. So naive in so many different ways. Gosh, I've been naive to the way people behave, the way people are. But the naivety has always kept me in a space of just, I suppose, knowing that we're all equal, knowing that we all love in some way, true or form, no matter what, no matter what about our stories, our backgrounds, our situations. And it's very interesting because my ex-husband and I just loved him and he loved me. We decided to move from one house to the next because we were always going to make extra money, so he claimed. And then we decided to go overseas to London, and I'll never forget this. In South Africa, we used to have the Hewlett's sugars, and on the pack, there was always a little awesome statement, to make you think. And we're sitting at a coffee shop, and we ummed and ahed. Are we going to go to London, or we're not going to go to London? We're going to go to London, we're not going to go to London. See how I was being looked after? This is like, how many years later? 4 years later, we're sitting in Cape Town. And I looked at this Hewlett sugar pack, and it said, regret the things that you did do rather than regret the things that you didn't do. And I looked at my ex-husband, Rick, and I said, you know what? Go and book. Go to Flight Centre and go and book. Let's do this. He was going to go before me, though. And I said, I'll pack up the home. And we just moved into a brand new home and that we'd built together. And we'll go to London. So he went, I met him, I think like 6.5, 7 weeks later. I then fell pregnant a year later, had a little baby girl in London, which was deeply, deeply, deeply traumatic for me. I had an emergency C-section. I felt so alone. And he never came with me. We had 2 scans. The third one because her one kidney wasn't dilating properly. He never even came with me to the first scan. So I felt alone. So deeply alone. He wasn't even excited the day that I felt pregnant, that I found out I was pregnant. I was just wanting to share it with everyone on the streets of Wimbledon. And I'd say, tell them. And he'd be like, tell them what? Again, all these different mixed emotions, And my beautiful baby daughter came. I was in labor for 19 hours and eventually ended up having an emergency C-section. And I could feel them in their hands in my stomach. They gave me a spinal, I can't think of the other one that they give you to numb your pain when they're cutting open. Right now, sorry guys, I can't think of the word. You all know what I mean, for those of you who are mothers. And it was crazy, just a crazy time. I had to learn how to shower on my own with loads and loads and loads of blood just seeping out of me. Just a different system in comparison to South Africa. South Africa, most of us would have been on private medical aid. You go to a gynecologist. This is just the public system. And then my ex-husband chose to pay for me for a private room. When you buzz, they come. But when you're in a freaking public room with 8 others, you buzz, they don't come. So I was trying to get up and trying to feed my daughter, and my boobs were engulfed, and I got mastitis in my breasts. And again, just doing these things. He was trying his best, I suppose, at the time. And then we came back to South Africa. We decided we'll come back. My little baby girl was 10 months old. We came to spend time with my parents because I hadn't met her. And he came back, which was supposed to be 2 months later. It ended up being 2.5 months later. And we were sitting having dinner, and my mom kept looking at him, kept looking at him. He didn't want to be near me. He didn't want to come and sit next to me. He didn't have sex with me. We didn't have sex for like 2-3 weeks. I was like, what the hell, man? I haven't seen you, dude, for like 2.5 months. And my mom said, he's having an affair, Michelle. No, he's not. Michelle is having an affair. No, he's not. Michelle is having an affair. Eventually, I discovered he had 2 cell phones. My mom was right. She knew all the signs, except in the days of them being younger, there was no cell phones. But stereotypical, you know, he did it in the way that so many people do it. And then he decided to flit backwards and forwards between London and South Africa. And every time he'd come back for 2 to 3 weeks, I say, why aren't you unpacking your bags? You're staying, aren't you? No, he's got to go back to London. My mom would say, I told you. Didn't want to admit it. And I said to him, if you go back to South Africa, it was the 3rd time that he had come back, and I said, please stay, we've got to keep going, we've got to make this work, we've got a beautiful little baby. He's like, no. And I'd moved down to Cape Town again, and my daughter got the rotavirus, got really, really sick. His family had never supported me. And the sense of aloneness, guys, the sense of loneliness of doing life on my own was still there since I was a little girl. You know, not being able to share, not being able to speak up. And she got so sick, and I got friends that took us in because his mom and dad didn't want to get this virus. His mom and dad didn't even come. They came to visit the one day for 5 minutes, and his mom was so perplexed at me and pissed off at me. And what I forgot to mention is that when I moved down to Cape Town in 1999, we got engaged after 2 months, and 8 months all in all got married. Crazy. Okay, crazy fairy tale story, but crazy. And I had a lump in my right breast in the next year. And when I went to go share this with his mom looked at me and said, in her very sarcastic humor, ha ha ha, well, with your looks, you'll probably have a Down syndrome as a baby. At the age of 27, number one, you don't want to hear that. Number two, you don't want to be told you've got a lump in your breast. The lump was removed. The doctor then called me in and said, I've got an underdeveloped uterus. I probably will never have kids at the age of 27. For me, all I ever wanted was to have children. And I just, for some reason, didn't take it on. Like, I remember that happening, and I remember thinking, no ways, man. You're not going to tell me how to work with my body. And hence I fell pregnant, clearly. And it wasn't too long after I'd gone off the pill that I'd fallen pregnant. Had a little baby girl, beautiful, beautiful child. And then eventually he went back the 3rd time, and I threatened him, and I said, if you go back this time, and it was 4 days before Christmas, he wasn't there for our daughter's 1st birthday. The 2nd birthday he came back, and I said to him, you've got to stay, please, let's make this work. And then I threatened him, and I said, if you go back, I am going to move on with my life. And we fought on the phone a lot. When are you coming back? Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to get on with my life. We had a little baby girl together. And eventually I found a guy. And I just wanted to have good sex, guys. Oh, my soul, my ex-husband was just incredibly, incredibly handsome, but incredibly boring. You know, all these ways, these thought forms, these magazines I'd read, there's got to be more. We've got to be having sex 3 times a week. Why aren't we? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, my soul. All these things that we are force-fed to believe. If only I could take it back. But we didn't have the best sex, in all honesty. It was great, but it wasn't great. Not great. So, yep, I met this guy, and he just divinely fell in love with Gabby, my little girl. And that was like, oh my God, searching, looking for this family connection. So I got involved with him. My ex-husband came back. He wasn't my ex at the time, but I started divorce proceedings. Came back and he begged me to get involved with him. Begged me. Still didn't know he was having an affair, just by the way. I was already making plans to move in with this guy. One of the biggest regrets of my life. Shouldn't have done it. Shows you how when we're in the deep root chakra and we're seeking for shit that is actually just shit. Not ideal. I wasn't in my heart. I wasn't thinking straight. My parents, once they'd heard I was divorcing my ex-husband and all I wanted was sole custody of our daughter, decided that they would take his stance in court because my ex decided he was coming back for good now. You've got to make it work. You've got to make it work. Coming from their own place of perspective, their own past, their own pain. It's like, no ways. I'm divorcing. I'm getting divorced. And it wasn't easy for me. There are many lawyers who ripped me off. I got to the third lawyer and eventually I was just like, just give me sole custody. Like, the maintenance is the maintenance. I just want sole custody to know that I can look after my daughter and make the decisions for her. And I was still involved with this guy, and then I realized he was a bit batshit crazy, off the charts. Like I say, going for just the connection, the desperation. I was desperate to be loved. Doesn't get us anywhere, ever. And I still didn't realize that I hadn't healed so much of my past, so much of my old trauma as a little girl, so much of my old disgust in men. You know, my parents used to go to these parties, and I remember being 5, 6 years old, and these guys would come up to me, grown men, would say, "Oh, Michelle, give me a kiss on the cheek." And obviously we're innocent. And I'd give them a kiss, and they'd say, "Okay, now a kiss here." And as soon as I give them a kiss, they'd grab my head and stick their tongues in my mouth. Who does that shit? I still didn't tell my parents because I just felt that they would never believe me. Bizarre. So I did, with my mother's programming of do not let men dominate you, the anger around. I hated men, guys. Hated them. Thought they were going to be my light and savior, that somebody's going to love me. If somebody would just love me, you know. But I, deep down inside, I had this absolute hatred, especially as a teenager when I began to realize what had happened to me. And then all these deep connections and these deep programmings that are deep, you know. So moved in with this guy. 2 months later, I was like, oh my God, I've got involved with crazy. Gave me everything, put me on a pedestal, made me feel exactly the way I wanted to feel. But the shame around uprooting my daughter and her life, I'm still working through that. I'm still working through the guilt of what I thought was a good decision at the time, but wasn't. It wasn't for her. I thought I was putting her first. It felt like I was putting her first. I was moving into a different suburb, different schools, better environment. I couldn't handle being in the heaviness of living with my parents. And by the way, never say never. I never wanted to go back to my hometown after being in London, Cape Town, thinking I was the bee's knees. And then heading back to live with my parents at the age of 33. I then shared with my parents. I sat them down one day and I said to them, guys, I need to tell you something. And they said, what? And I said, Mom, your brother, Wayne, he abused me. My dad said, really? He said, didn't he just fiddle with you? And in my sarcasm, I joked and I said, Dad, apparently I give the best blowjobs in town. Ha 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 ha. And I laughed, kind of brushing it off. I lived very disassociated for a very long time in my life, very out of my body, in a state of fight, flight, fright for most of my life, from what I can remember. And my mom said, why didn't you tell me? I said, I don't know, Mom. I just sat with this. I said, I used to have these visions of Dad getting drunk and taking a gun and shooting him. These absolute nightmares, actually, where I was like, no, Dad, like on my deathbed, grabbing my dad and saying, this is my secret, you know, like that was the hatred that was so deep-seated inside of me. And we carry this heaviness, guys. We carry it for such a long time. And so after being with this guy for living with him for 2 months, I then said, okay, this isn't going to work. And he tried to screw me over by getting me to move out the flat that we had moved into. My ex-husband, like I say, was back. I said to him, come on, the divorce hasn't gone through, let's give it another go. And he kept, no. And then I said to him, You're bringing her, aren't you? And our little baby daughter was having her tonsils out and we were sitting at the hospital. And I said to him, tell me now, I've had an affair, because I did. I was still married on paper, even though this was like 2 years later of my husband coming and going, and not knowing, am I married? Is he going to be involved? He just wasn't for a long time. And then I said, okay, so I've done my thing now, tell me. And then the truth came out. And there was such a sense of relief that I wasn't losing my mind. There was such a sense of relief that my mom was right. There was such a sense of, oh, my soul, I'm so grateful that that we can have this open conversation. And we stayed friends. He brought her over, and I said to him, I want to meet her. He's like, no, she's not ready. I don't care. But what I forgot to share with you in this sharing is that in all of this, in my divorce, I was so angry. My period was off the charts. My monthly cycle was all over the place. I was bleeding for 3-4 weeks at a time. I went to a gynecologist, got put onto medication, and a friend said to me, Mesh, why don't you go and see this clairvoyant? And I said, okay. This clairvoyant said, Michelle, you just don't know how to love yourself. Have you looked at you? Have you heard about your past? And I was like, what do you mean? Just help me with my anger. Help me just realize that there's more to life. There's got to be more. I'm just tired of the suffering, tired of the pain. I'm tired of not being loved. My mom didn't hug me. At the age of 16, I said to her, Mom, you don't tell me that you love me. She goes, of course I do. I said, no, you don't. My mom was a very angry drunk. Very angry drunk. And a pattern that played itself out, even though she'd had the gun that I was talking about. I'd had my daughter on my hips, and my mom and I were fighting. I was standing outside, and she was in the kitchen. And like I say, I'm working through the guilt and the shame. Because I had my daughter. My mom and I were fighting, and my mom had alcohol in her. I didn't. And this is how it went. We would have these rip-roaring fights, and all I wanted to do was just be loved. So this beautiful young man who was a clairvoyant said to me, go on this weekend retreat. And I said, okay. And it was with hospice on the West Rand in Johannesburg. And it was the lifeline I was looking for. It was the reprieve. It was the answer to my prayers every night. I would pray to Jesus. Please, God, Jesus, please, Jesus. There's got to be more to life. Every night I would pray. And then I met my wonderful facilitator and counselor. And I see the time-wise, it's 1 hour and 46 minutes that I've been talking already. Whew. It feels like, it's a few minutes for me. So my apologies. I'm just tuning in and seeing if I need to continue. Just asking for guidance, and they're saying yes. And I met my beautiful facilitator, and this was 9 years after my accident where I had knocked over and killed this young girl. And that's what I forgot to mention, is that it came to light through the police report that she was a young teenager and that she was a big girl. And her mom had phoned me, and I panicked. And I thought my ex-husband was playing, even though he wasn't my husband at the time. This was just before I was going to London, thinking I was going to London. And she phoned and she said, hi, Michelle, my name's Mary. Beautiful, beautiful black lady. And she said, I am, and I cannot remember her name, so-and-so's mother. And I went, so-and-so's mother, what do you mean? And she said, you knocked over my daughter. And I went, what do you mean? And I started to panic and I became defensive. And I was like, are you playing a joke? Are you playing a joke? And she said, no. She said, my daughter was 14 years old and she was a very big girl. And she had had an accident, a car accident. A car knocked her over at the age of 7. She wasn't very streetwise. I was devastated, guys. Devastated. But she wanted to find out how I was. She said, I know this couldn't have been easy for you. And it's like everything came to a pause in my life in that moment where I was like, wow. And I was charged. I didn't go to jail, but basically a year of going backwards and forwards. So I'd moved to Cape Town, found the lump in my breast, and then I was going backwards and forwards to be in court. And eventually I was acquitted. And I was devastated. For years and years and years, I was devastated. And don't ask me why, by the thought that my ex-boyfriend had said to me that it was he said to me it was an older woman, like in her 60s. I think I remember him saying 50s, 60s. Not that that makes any difference. A life is a life, guys. But to hear that it's a teenager just takes it to a whole different level. And for those of you who are watching and knowing that as I'm crying, as I'm releasing, this is again part of what my heart stores. I cry when I speak on podcasts every now and again, especially when I mention the mother phoning me, because it's like almost like, wow, she took the time. She took the time. I would probably do the same thing, to be honest, if I was allowed, if I could. She took the time to find out how I was. What an earth angel, even though she'd gone through such massive loss. So fast forward to me being on this hospice weekend, and this facilitator, this beautiful woman, got me to feel how I felt about knocking over and killing this young girl 9 years later. Well, guys, my head split open. I cried so hard, and she just held me. I cried so hard, like there were massage therapists on this weekend, and they were trying to massage me, and eventually I think I took painkillers and went to sleep. And woke up feeling a little bit different the next day. But it was this continuous sort of cycle of learning to forgive myself. And then I started seeing this counselor, this facilitator, and she started to help me work with my inner child, with my sexual abuse, forgiving myself at the age of 5, forgiving my uncle, which has been a process. So in the year 2019, in December, I decided to send him an email on Facebook Messenger, telling him exactly how I felt, exactly what I thought of him. And for those of you who are perhaps interested, it was harsh. My letter was not kind. And I'm going to see if I can find it, otherwise I'll share it another time. But it was brutal. And what amazes me is that I can't find it right now. I can share it another time. But what amazes me is that, on Facebook Messenger, when you're not friends with somebody, you don't know if they're going to get the message request. And the very next morning I woke up and there was a message from him apologizing, saying he was just a young boy, a young man. And please, we're family. Please forgive me. And I shed a few tears, and my husband said to me, are you okay? And I said, yep, I'm okay. And it just felt like a cycle. It was so important for me to share exactly how I felt and how disgusted I was with him. And I didn't hold back on my words, please know that, in my letter. But I felt like I needed to go into 2020 with this letting go and finding forgiveness. And every now and again it comes up, a story comes up, and I'm like, how am I feeling about this? How am I feeling about him? And I feel like this, it's done. But I've taken a long time, lots and lots and lots of therapy to work on forgiving my 5-year-old self, this little person. Beautiful hairstyle, hey? I think I actually even cut my own hair. But I'll come back with more, guys, and I'll share more. So for those of you who have watched right up until the end, thank you for staying with me on this journey. And my point in sharing my story, my point in finding forgiveness for my father, my mom, in me sharing to the depth of sometimes what feels like such hurt, such pain, such sorrow. But as I've let go, as I've released, even in this day now, our bodies let go and feel lighter. My heart feels lighter. And in my sharing, I want to let you know that we can work through anything. We've just got to put it out there that we connect with somebody who can be there for me, who can hold space for me, for you. Sorry. I was thinking that this friend of mine that had been there for me, she was with me on my journey for 9 years, day and night, night and day. She had her own family of 4, and we walked very similar journeys, very similar. It was fascinating. Much older than me. I think she's 14 years older than me. But wow, what a beautiful blessing and light that the universe brought into my space for my beautiful friend Vicky, to honor her. I don't know what I would have done without her, because she gave me the love that I so desperately wanted and needed. She showed me how to be a great mom. She showed me how to stand up for myself, which I'm still learning. She showed me how to love myself, and she imparted wisdom that I'm still working through and learning. And the very, very first book that I ever got was this one, You Can Heal Your Life. And guys, I have gone back to this one and back to this one. I used to listen to Louise Hay CDs, listen to Wayne Dyer. And my beautiful friend was always helping me to interpret the information, understand the information. And my ego kicked in a lot of the times. I don't understand. But I'm here today to share my story, to share my truth, to share what I've worked through, what I continuously work through. Not every day, not every week. But my light self, my happy, joyful self, my authentic self is here right now in this moment. And you are worth doing the work, the inner work. Any spiritual master will tell you, will share with you the inner work, the emotional work is so important. I, up until the age of 33, had no freaking idea how much I'd suppressed, how much I'd held on to, how much deep longing I'd felt to want to be loved, how much deep longing I'd felt in my aloneness. And I was, as a young girl, I was very alone a lot of the times. I felt alone, most certainly. Felt like I didn't know where I came from. And I often got told as this young little girl, oh, Michelle, you're so unique, you're so cute. But it was those old programmings plus the trauma of being smacked when I was 2. You know, those things sit in our bodies. We contract. We hold on to it. I can honestly share with you that, yes, I still have moments, and I've shared this openly, of PTSD, but I'm not so triggered as much as I used to be. It's kind of like when we impart from these emotions, these feelings, we impart them, we part with them, we let them come through us, and we let them be, that we realize that we are light, we are spirit. I used to get stuck in my story a lot. Victimhood. This happened to me. Why did this happen to me? Blah, 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 blah. I'm so devastated. I'm a good person. And this takes me back to what I started sharing with you. When we come from that space of guilt, when we come from that space of victimhood, it doesn't get us anywhere. So I'm not here to share my story to say I'm the martyr, I've got all my shit together. I'm most certainly a work in progress. Hence, I was sharing with you that I was triggered by this woman yesterday. Yet I'm owning my worth. I'm owning my journey. I'm owning my story. And I've been shown many a times to write a book, because there's more with my second marriage. A lot of other stuff that has come up for me, working through the trauma. And my mom gifted me this in her passing over. It's 1.5 years now. In December, it'll be 2 years. And I didn't know what to call my book. And she said to me, call it Seat of Courage. So, hey guys, I don't know if this is a book in the making. It's most certainly my story. And I want you all to know that we all have a story to share. And as we let go of the shame, as we let go of the disgust, my absolute disgust in, being in fight or flight, moving my daughter, seeking, crazy, but the desperation of just wanting to be loved, we do things that are so out of the norm, so out of the context of who we truly are. And it's not wrong or right. It's just a learning of letting go of what no longer serves us. But when we're in a space of clarity, clearness, connection, kindness, compassion for ourselves on our own journey, because as you can see, I'm speaking to myself right now. I've shared 2 hours. Oh no, sorry, I don't know how long this has been. I don't know what time I started, but anyway, I'll find out afterwards. But I'm sharing, I'm talking to myself, and in talking to myself, I'm healing in talking to myself, but in the hope of talking to all of you who are watching this, and knowing that the connection and the compassion and the love that I've found for myself throughout my whole journey, which again is an unfolding, is where we seek, no, that's incorrect, the way I wanted to say that, is where I found my true authentic self. And I know I can be dippy, I know I can be off the charts, crazy sometimes, but I know I'm unique in my own self, as you all are unique in your own self, as you all have your story to tell, to share, with no shame. But those are the lower vibrational feelings that we feel: shame, disgust, embarrassment, pride, frustration, anger. And there's always, always, always a thread of sadness underneath all of that. Sadness for ourselves, for where we maybe weren't heard, or maybe weren't loved. I had my tonsils out at 21 years old. 21. It was incredibly painful. Yet, the tonsillitis carried on and carried on. And again, being in hospital got me to stop. And at the same time, I had so much love and care and concern for my parents. But I used to push it out a lot. I know that too. I used to act like I was all tough, like I've got my shit together. So for those of you who have a story to share, you'll know when the right timing is to share it. I started writing my book over 3 years ago, and I was so angry at my mother, I couldn't get past that chapter. And with her passing over, I started to heal a lot of my lineage, my feminine energy. And I feel like even sharing this with you all today is a big part of that. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you who are here, who are watching this, who might have shed some tears of joy, tears of sadness, whatever they may be. There's no judgment. I'm just incredibly grateful to all of you that are here right now. From my heart to yours, guys, love is why we are here. I love you all, and I thank you for being on this journey with me, this miraculous journey of being alive, of being human, and over and above all, being the light in someone's eyes, hopefully yours. So I wish you well. I wish you the most beautiful day. And if the triggers come, allow them to come and allow them to move through you. Emotions, energy in motion. Love you guys. Bye.